You're Between Two Dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Marv, also known as the Educated Meathead. This show can't work if both of us are dumb. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. We might argue and debate, or we might agree and tell each other how smart we both are. At the end of the discussion, though, we both decide if we smash or pass the topic of the day. Of course, we'll also be doing another segment of Intimate Time with Skip and Dr. Marv, and then we'll finish, as always, with a few listener questions, which are typically, though not always, related to a past show. Remember, every time you comment on the show on YouTube, you'll be included in a drawing at the end of each month to receive a TEAMSKIP t-shirt of your choosing from the TEAMSKIP.com store, and you'll receive Dr. Marv's online bodybuilding anatomy course as well. The more times you respond, the better your chances of winning. We'll post the winner for the month on my Intense Muscle IG account, and we'll also reach out to the winner via their YouTube account. And I want to add that next month, I'll be sweetening the pot, Dr. Marv. I'm going to add a $150 shopping spree for EliteFTS.com store. That's pretty good, right? Yeah. I mean, it could be t-shirts. It could be lifting straps. It can be whatever you want from the store. $150.
Nice.
All right, I'm going to take the Posit if you don't mind. Is that cool?
Absolutely.
I think it's going to be a good one. I always say that. I don't catch myself till after I say it.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, I posit that you can arguably use the same exercises, the same movements, but change bars or grip position and continue to provide the stimulus that the muscle's not seen. And this would support, of course, adaptation, AKA continued hypertrophy. And I say hypertrophy because I got busted for not saying hypertrophy. But here's the thing. Are you frustrated because you live in Britain? Or are you frustrated because you live in the United States? Neither one is correct or incorrect. Hypertrophy, hypertrophy. There you go. Now, I have some favorite bars. I'll share mine, but I don't want to dig into that yet. I think you do as well. Mm-hmm. I want to get your thoughts before I, kind of lay out the three bars and talk about the different bars and that sort of thing. What do you think? Do I have a solid point, or do you disagree?
Without doing a spoiler, yes, I agree with you completely. Okay. So there's the soundbite. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think like bodybuilders do that way less than powerlifters, right? Powerlifting's impressive with how many different bar variations they have, right? Like they're onto stuff. I will tell you this, we're probably jumping ahead, but if you're somebody who religiously back squats and it works well for you and you only use a straight bar and you've used a straight bar every single leg day for 5 years straight and your elbows are killing you, a big reason why your elbows are killing you is you use the same bar for 5 years straight.
Right. And there's something to be said too. I may talk about or may have said in the past as an example, dumbbell pressing with a neutral grip is not a good idea from a bodybuilding standpoint because that allows the elbows to tuck and there's less pec involvement and more front delt involvement. And at the same time, sometimes that can be a nice variation or a change of pace as an example to where the pec can get a different stimulus, though it may be argued that it's maybe not as efficient. I know a thing or two about training, but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated. So there's that. That's just one example. So I know you've got some studies that you can pull out, which I was surprised. I didn't think that there would be. So that's going to be interesting. I can jump into my bar selection if that's the way that we want to take this.
Yeah, why don't we just go, you do one, I do one, you do one, I do one. And as usual, like when we send each other our bars, you picked one I for sure was going to use.
Right.
So I was like, oh, cool. And I don't see a lot of people do it, and it's super underrated. So let's have you give your first one, and we'll talk about stuff.
Okay, I call it the GridIron bar. I think you call it the football bar.
Football bar, yeah, that's how I learned about
And
it. Yep.
I prefer the cambered version, which
Okay.
is essentially the bend in the middle.
Yep.
And not as much from a pressing standpoint, though there's an advantage there if you want to go deeper, but from a rowing standpoint. So I don't think this bar gets used as much for rowing. I don't think it gets used much at all in bodybuilding, if I'm being honest. It's kind of a powerlifting, strongman type of, I see it used primarily for overhead pressing, kind of like a log press or a variation of a log press. Is that okay? So I like it for rowing. And, you know, the example on the screen, it's difficult to tell because it's from the side, but I'm doing barbell rows with that bar. And I think there's two versions of the grip. There's the one, I prefer the one with the V's.
Okay, the angled, yeah.
Exactly, versus the neutral. Now, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the neutral version. It's almost like a tricep bar with several,
or like an old school Swiss bar almost. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I've seen people use that bar with all the neutral grip for different variations for tricep extensions. The only argument I have against that is that's a long bar to be balancing out when your hands are real close together. The most subtle change ends up taking one side, you know, another 3 inches. And it feels like it's very, very difficult to control versus the shorter bar. But nonetheless, my favorite exercise with it is the barbell row. And it's an odd, I don't know if you can see it very clearly. It probably would have been more clear with a video than it would the picture. But you have to be very, very clear, or very, very careful and methodic with the rep path or the bar path, because it takes up a lot of space. It's a very thick bar. So if you take it too low, it's going to hit your quad. And if it does, it'll want to roll a little bit in your hand. So you have to get it close, but you can't drag it like you can a regular bar. If you happen to hit it, okay, you scrape the quad a little bit, no big deal. The other thing is if you're wearing a weight belt, you have to pull it relatively evenly as it comes in, or if you're pulling it too hard and it's explosive, then one side, if the bottom comes up a little higher than the top, it can kind of, again, it can kind of roll. So you have to play with it a little bit, but once you get that rhythm and the movement to where it's fluid, and of course you're going to warm up, you're going to feel it out, move up in weight, that sort of thing. So it gives you an opportunity to kind of feel it out, but the movement is very, very smooth. And with that kind of V, I call it a V grip. I don't know if that's the technical term, but that's my term. It's just a really good angle. You can also flip the bar around and go kind of an under grip as well with the V, without it being a true complete under grip. I'm not great with under grip rows simply because it feels forced. And I have narrow shoulders and clavicles. So I think about people with wide shoulders. I go, this would have to be even worse. Like it would probably feel more comfortable and less awkward for me than it would for somebody with a wider shoulder structure. So I'm guessing, because I don't have a wider shoulder structure, I do sit around sometimes and wonder, what would it feel like to have a better shoulder to waist ratio? What would it feel like sitting in an airplane seat with really wide shoulders? I don't know. I can only speculate. I look over at my wife and I go, your shoulders are arguably as wide as mine. That's messed up. Anyway, I digress. The under grip with that V hand is a very smooth. Now I have to come in more narrow, obviously. But it doesn't, and I'd even argue that it's possible that V angle could take away from the vulnerability that the bicep can be put in on an under grip row. Because an under grip row I think it's a very underrated position for the back, but at the same time, it kind of promotes people to pull in correctly. You know, I had my 212 guy, Manny, a couple years ago, was just getting ready for a show. He was making a run for Olympia points to get to the Olympia stage. And he actually was videoing his reps with 405 and he tore the bicep during an under grip row. And I could almost look at the way he was pulling and go, ooh, that doesn't, and then it happened. And I'm like, oh shit, no. So and I don't want to get into the discussion about how to pull, correctly and everything, because that's not what we're focused on right now. But that will make a great topic of discussion as well. Because again, that comes back, I think you'd agree, to pulling from the elbows instead of pulling from the hands in the bar. And that is not only the most important cue, but if you pull your bicep doing an under grip row, you're not pulling from the elbows. That's just it. And I don't care about the weight. People will say, oh, he was rowing 405. No, that's not as much the issue as the mechanics of pulling from the wrist, pulling from the resistance itself versus the elbow. Anyway, your thoughts on that bar? Have you used it?
Yeah. I've had access to the regular and the cambered. And yeah, I really like them. I don't do, unfortunately, any free pressing. I've never done a row with it. Because with my low back, how I broke it when I was younger, bent over rows, or I just don't touch them. But I will program it if people have access to it, especially, obviously not our target demographic, but if I'm doing athlete coaching or programming and they have that, that's how they do all their pressing versus a straight bar, right? They either do dumbbells or that football bar because of, the handles will force you to tuck your elbows. Again, from a pure hypertrophy standpoint, well, you're not getting as much pec. Good thing we don't have to do only one exercise per workout, so you'll get it. But I will, I've programmed a row with it once. Typically I'll do trap bar rows, which is kind of, you're out wider, but similar idea of you're getting a neutral grip versus overhand or underhand.
Right.
In terms of bent over rows being underhand, which is known as supination, right? So palms up. That's how I remember it, supinate. Yes, that does you'll have more bicep activity. We know this, but the risk to reward. What do most people tear their biceps on? A lot of underhand barbell rows.
Yeah.
And especially as you get bigger, like we've talked about, most people lose some mobility. That's why it's really important to do your mobility work before you train, preferably after, but let's be realistic. Most people don't do it after, but still working on mobility, especially how much this is called pronation, this is called supination, how well you could do that. So doing that 45-degree angle, it's kind of like the easy bar, right? Versus a straight bar. Yes, on paper, in a vacuum, a straight bar should get a little bit more biceps activation because you're able to supinate versus an easy bar. But we're arguing over percentages in a vacuum and what's safer to do long-term. Without a doubt, an easy bar for curls or this for a semi underhand row. 100% agree with you on that.
Can I real quick give a cue for supination and pronation? Superman, supination man. Huh? Right?
Okay.
I mean, that's what I was, and it's fun. That's why it was told to me as a joke, is it would have been easier to remember if Superman was flying like this.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
Superman, supination man. It's like, well, you got it backwards. But yeah, and I remember it was funny because those are the cues that will stick with you that you'll never forget. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. I mean, there's some classics out there,
Correct. Yeah, mine is palms up. So sup, soup, innate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But no, I think, not a lot of gyms have this bar. It's more prevalent in powerlifting gyms. But even then it's not the most common, even in a hardcore strength gym. An overhead press would be brutal because there is a lot more stability demands, like you've talked about, because it's so big.
And it is great.
And that center of mass can turn on you.
Yep.
So loading will be down. But in terms of total body strength, that's why for my athlete-based programs, right, that are not like super aesthetics based, I love this bar. But I do think it could be used a lot more in bodybuilding. And I do think, I would, if you have access to this, use this instead of a traditional barbell for a bent over row. And you could play around even with the same bar, like you talked about in the Posit. You could do hammer for a while. You could do the slight, 45-degree overhand, the slight 45-degree underhand. Like changing that will also change where your elbows, naturally line up. So that would be really helpful as well. Yeah, I think it's vastly underutilized, and I honestly don't know how many people even know this bar exists, to be honest.
It's funny because I ordered one at my gym. I
Okay.
ordered it and then I
Nice.
had it delivered to my
Yeah.
gym, and it just sits in the corner. I'm literally one of two
The
guys
only
who will pull
one.
it out and use it. And
Yeah.
you'll see in the picture here, I call her Goose because she's our youngest, but our daughter Reese is doing the press, and I have used that press as a finisher.
Yeah.
Because everything else is fatigued by that point.
It's
I've done flies, I've
brutal.
done cable flies, that sort of, and it is a great finisher because of course the elbows are tucked a little bit more, but you'll be surprised that the contraction, I know I was, that the contraction was as strong as it was because I'm not used to being in that internally rotated position. It was really good. Now, I wouldn't open with it, and I wouldn't start with that movement maybe as my second movement because my shoulders would not be ready for that. It just wouldn't be something that my shoulders would be accustomed to be able to go heavy. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. But finishing with it is great. And the overhead press that you said, I've done that a couple times with a standing press. And I know you're not a big fan of things. You like exercises to be more stable. I'm not against that, but I like that lack of stability, especially with a push press when it's a finishing move.
Yeah.
Because then I can use that push out of the hole. And remember, I'm big on lockouts for overhead shoulder pressing. And maybe it's because of my narrow shoulders, but that lockout at the top is huge for me. It will blow up, whether it's behind the neck press, military press, standing dumbbell push press. I get into some different, I don't do Arnold presses because I don't believe in the rotation. That's just a me thing. There may not be anything to that. But to me, I don't like rotating at the shoulder under resistance like that. But a push press with just a neutral grip dumbbell, they're difficult to balance when you're finishing with those. It's not a big weight exercise, but it's great when it's at a full lock and then the control down and then the explode up, that sort of thing. So it's a great bar. And here's one more point that I think is important for people with garage gyms. That bar can add so much versatility to allow you to do, you just added all those variations for rows. You added all those variations for chest, arguably incline, and even overhead pressing as well. So with one bar.
And if you don't have dumbbells, right, you could get into some hammer curls, especially for my strong men. Like you've got to have that bicep and forearm as strong as humanly possible. Otherwise, it's not it's when you tear a bicep, especially if you're doing like an Atlas stone or a Crucifeld carry, blah, blah, blah. So highly versatile.
And rate the cost of that bar if you're strong versus the cost of dumbbells to do things like rows and dumbbell presses and all that sort of. If you're just starting out with your home gym, this is a very cost-effective piece to allow you to do a lot of different exercises without spending a ton of money.
One of my favorite, when I used to be able to free press, I would do this with a pin start, and I would do Dr. Scott Stevenson's muscle rounds with this. Holy hell. Now, I'm not a strong presser, but it would be even less than I anticipated and just crazy chest and tricep pump afterwards.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think more people need to know about it. More people need to, especially if you have a history of shoulder issues like myself, right? Where this position, I should raise my chair a little bit. I can't. So this position would be hard. So it's automatically going to tuck you there. So that can keep you there. And you're still going to get chest, right? So it's not like the chest goes to zero.
Right.
It's just, yes, you'll get a little bit more there. But if you're coming back from rehab, I would, typically, like we talked about, that dumbbell crush, squeeze press, whatever, unless you're rehabbing it, stay away from it. So that was like our third or fourth episode ever. But this would be a great, okay, now you've done the dumbbell crush press. Now let's get you to here using that football bar as a way to progress your rehab.
Right. Now, do you
Love
want
it.
me to go with my second bar, or do you want to throw one of your selections in?
So let's throw in the safety squat bar.
Nice.
Yep. So I personally hate safety squat bars and I don't program them, but they do have a lot of benefit.
Sure. Okay.
But I don't personally do them. And what was cool is we actually have some data comparing a safety squat bar to a traditional barbell. Most of it's not going to surprise folks. I do think that, again, powerlifters do way more SSB stuff than bodybuilders, but I do like it, especially for garage gym trainers. It's awesome. And it's a nice, different, novel stimulus to really create a lot more upper back strength and getting you used to kind of being in a slightly flexed position, creating a lot of strength. So that's pretty good.
Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com, where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses.
Do you want me just to quickly give the data and then we'll continue the conversation? Or okay. So, 2 different studies, and they'll be on the screen, found that, no big surprise, you're about anywhere from 11 to 12%, like weaker, so to speak, in terms of how much load you could put on a safety squat bar compared to a straight bar, right? Like in theory, nobody's going to have a higher safety squat bar compared to a traditional straight bar unless you've got like shoulder issues where you can't get your hands there. So that shouldn't be a big surprise. But in this paper, obviously a low bar had the highest loading, low bar back squat had the highest loading potential, followed by the high bar back squat position, followed by the SSB bar. Everybody knows the first time you view an SSB bar, like say you're just, you're the average person and we're skewed, like a 3 plate per side back squat's not average. Let's just say that's what you do. You are not putting 3 plates aside your first time you ever use an SSB bar.
Right.
You're just not. Like, I would be impressed if you do your same reps with just 225 because it's so damn different.
Yeah.
Now, benefits of it, because you're more upright, it forces you to be more upright. So it takes a lot of shearing force off of the low back. So if you're somebody with chronic low back issues, this is a way to train the squat pattern and take some of that natural lumbar shearing stress off your low back. It does mean, though, because you're more upright, you're going to have, greater knee flexion extension compared to a traditional barbell. With a traditional barbell, even a high bar, you're going to have a lot more hip flexion and a lot more, forward lean of the trunk compared to SSB, because you have to stay upright. Otherwise, you're going to do this weird good morning and it puts a ton of pressure on your neck.
Right.
Muscle activation. So it's interesting. So there's a few studies on it. One didn't find any difference between an SSB bar compared to a high or low back squat bar. And they looked at your rec fem, your quad sweep, your teardrop, your outer hamstring, the bicep femoris, your glute max, and your erector spinae and your erectus abdominis. So on those 7 different muscles, they didn't really see anything statistically significant. So they didn't say that. Another one, though, found better glute max recruitment even compared to a high bar and a low bar. And that might surprise people, right? You would think low bar, well, I'm getting a bigger stretch in the glutes, right? That moment arm, like we've talked about, is now bigger. But because you're getting that loaded stretch, you're now getting a lot more adductor involvement, like we've talked about, in a low bar compared to an SSB bar. So head to head, if you're only looking at surface EMG studies, the glute max is activated way more in an SSB bar than any sort of barbell squat. So wellness competitors, this might be one, because most wellness competitors I work with, they don't do a lot of squatting or they do, this crazy low bar, almost good morning squat.
Yeah.
Well, SSB, try that and see what you think. And then one other study, no big surprise, found increased lower trap activation, which we know I'm big on getting that from shoulder health and performance standpoints. And then less rectus abdominis, your 6-pack, less hamstring, less outer quad street, and less calf. But they're very clear, and I agree with them, that less activation is probably just due to lower loads, because you simply can't load it the same way.
Yeah, and it surprises me that there's less calf
Mm-hmm.
when it, for lack of a better way to explain it, kind of pushes you forward.
Mm-hmm. It's well, there's going to be less ankle as we bring the toes up, dorsiflexion, because remember, you're more upright, so you're going to have more movement in a straight bar at the ankle than that. But
Yeah.
I'm with you though, where I was like, I still would have expected that. But I think if you somehow were able to do the same load, I don't think it would be that big of a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But
All
there
right,
is
fair
way less ankle dorsiflexion demand. So again, if you're somebody lacking ankle mobility, this could be a workaround. And then we don't really do a lot of Hatfield squats or step back lunges in bodybuilding. Those are an awesome tool. And I don't see a lot of bodybuilders doing that. If you don't know what that is, you should look it up. But that dude was way ahead of his time with hardcore strength training. Like, good God. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's now I personally don't use them, like I said, because I don't like the pressure. I have Dave Draper's top squat attachment, which kind of mimics it. And now it has the handles coming out way out here, so I can leverage my lats a little bit and it doesn't put pressure on my neck. But that's me. Do you use an SSB bar? Have you used an SSB bar?
No, but I was going to transition. I was going to transition and choose my next bar to piggyback off of it. So I'll wait on that. Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, so that's it. Again, they're awesome for home gym users because it totally changes the back recruitment. I think it's an underrated tool for getting your erectors incredibly strong.
Mm-hmm.
And then good mornings are actually more feasible with an SSB bar than a barbell, right? I don't think we do a lot of that in bodybuilding. Most bodybuilders I see do good mornings have a powerlifting background.
Agreed.
I just go, to each their own. But if we're looking at just pure aesthetics, just do your RDLs or your stiff leg deads, right? Because the injury risk. But for powerlifting, it's really, really important. But if you need a new squat variation, especially home gym or garage gym folks, look into Hatfield squats with an SSB bar. It's brutal. Or step back lunges, Hatfield style. I will say, it was like my first week here and I was playing around with step back lunges and I was like, it's just a warm up set. I'm not going to put collars on. I'm going to see if I could find the footage because one side flipped off and then it got crazy.
Okay.
And I was like, cool. This is like my first week in the gym that I'm planning to go to for the rest of my time here.
Yeah.
That's a great way to tell everybody I know what I'm doing. So always put the collars on when you're doing any sort of Hatfield style motion. And that's just you're holding on to the rack or resistance band or a bar for support.
And you said you forgot his first name. It's Fred.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I didn't catch that right away. I'm like, did he say he didn't?
I was drawing a blank for some reason. I've learned a ton from him over the years. Super, super smart.
Yeah. Legend, icon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no question. Okay, I'm going to take this opportunity then to piggyback off of your bar into my second choice for variation for bar, and that's the cambered spider bar.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not big on the safety squat, but there's just something about it that just doesn't feel right. It feels awkward to me, and I don't know what it almost feels forced. Like I can't find a rhythm or I can't find a groove that just feels fluid and feels good. Now, spider bar, on the other hand, and you may need to explain this because I'm not sure. I can tell the difference in the feel, but I haven't done or used the safety squat bar enough over the years. I mean, I found out early on that I did not like it. It just didn't feel right, so I avoided it. I probably only used it maybe 5 times. So that'll give you an idea. That's not very long in 41 years. Now, there wasn't a safety squat bar for the first 30 of those or first 25 of those. That's not the point. So I get one of these. I order it from Elite FTS. I ordered a lot of stuff actually to the gyms.
Oh, so you have this cambered spider bar?
Yeah, I did. It's at Titan Gym in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh.
Yeah, when I was training there. So I get this and I'm like, you know what? This looks like mechanically like this would be a better feel than the safety squat. So I'm going to check this out. So I get it. And the best way for me to explain it to anybody who hasn't used it is I don't feel as much of a forward push as the safety squat bar. And I think that's simply because the weight hangs down lower, you know, off of the essentially the point where the weight is it's offset, basically.
Yep.
Now, here's the kicker, and I got to make sure that I say this first. Dangerous bar. Very dangerous bar. Yes, it's rackable, but you can't use any safety pins because they'll be in the way of where the plates load the bar. Okay, that's number one. Two, you take the safety racks out. If you fail, you can't get out from under, you can't dump the bar.
Correct.
You're in a world of shit. The only way to get out of it, there's two ways to get out of these sets. You rack the last rep and step out from underneath it, or you literally fail and have to somehow set it down and have somebody pull you out from under, because you're trapped under the bar. You're covered in the front, so good luck getting out in the front. You literally would have to force it back, go to dump it, and as soon as you go to dump it, the handles are going to want to flip forward and they're going to hit you. Never mind, that's before it even hits the floor. Because when it hits the floor, those handles in that bar is going to be, it's going to be everywhere. You can't fail on this unless you literally have someone who's squatting you or spotting you while you're squatting.
That would be impressive to see if somebody could pull that off.
And look, I've trained for a lot of years and I've trained with great training partners, but I never trained with a training partner that if they couldn't get me out, that I couldn't dump it.
Yeah.
So I just don't have that level of trust. I'm not going to take this exercise to failure. I'm just not going to. And maybe you don't plan on it, but you have an injury. Maybe you F something up, your back or your knee. I don't know. I'm not trying to create all these scenarios to scare you away from it, but
the only thing I could come up with, this is off the top of my head, so if it's a terrible idea, you get to see my brain at work, is if you had like the squat, you know, like the jump plyo boxes on either side back where you take a step back and then lower them on each side. But that would be a hell of a lot of setup.
Possibly. You do have straps. You could use safety straps from the top of the rack.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's certainly a possibility. But good luck finding those outside of a powerlifting gym.
Exactly. In powerlifting gyms, they just put SSBs and these in that, and you don't even have to worry about it. For bodybuilding in the average gym, I completely agree with you. So, now, I've never used one, but that makes more sense because it's obviously the lower peg where you put the weights is going to change moment arms and all that. So the load would be moving significantly downward. So that would take a lot of stress off of what's called your CT, your cervicothoracic junction, that the SSB bar typically puts on there. And then because of that, that's going to, and it depends though where you're using your handles. You could shift the weight in front of you.
Sure.
Or shift the weight neutral slightly behind. So that'll change it. But that would even further reduce hip extension. So on paper in a vacuum, because nobody's done a study on a spider bar, but that would be less hip extensor demand. So glute max, adductor magnus, but it would increase knee extensor demands, i.e. quadriceps. So I'm assuming you feel it way more in your quads, correct?
Yeah. Where the safety squat bar to me is like, and this is an exaggeration to be dramatic, 95% posterior chain. I mean, it's just this massive forward push for me.
And maybe that's me not wanting to do something I suck at, which is normally what you need to do, but I gave up on this. I tried it 4 times in a row and I was like, my neck hurts. I'm getting headaches, blah, blah, blah. But if you're coming back from a shoulder injury, if you're a garage gym trainer, all these reasons we talked about with the SSB bar, this bar might be for you. If you're a garage gym person, you have to use the strap Skip was talking about.
Because this bar and a safety squat bar, that's dangerous in a garage gym by yourself, I think.
I
think it ranks right up there with like a Decline Smith. They'll kill you if you get caught underneath them. And when I say Decline Smith, a Decline Smith chest press or something where you can get trapped and not be able to get out from underneath it. That's all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
So.
but man, I wish I could try that bar because I'm assuming it takes a lot of force off of that upper neck region, correct?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, clearly
That
you
makes a
still
lot of
have the
sense to me.
resistance there because that's
Yeah.
where the weight
Yeah.
is hanging from. But
Yeah.
the fact that it hangs so much lower
Mhm.
is just if I had the choice between, if I only had two choices to squat, safety squat or the spider bar, I still would never use the safety squat bar. This
I
spider
second that,
bar is
but not even
awesome.
using it. Yeah, without even using it, I would second that. Now, again, though, that's just me. But yeah, I think I don't even know how many people even knew that existed. I bet you fewer people knew that existed than the football or the gridiron.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah,
Yep.
that could be.
Good. Let's go to since we're talking about cambered, let's go to a traditional cambered bar. So just the barbell with that. And there's a few studies on it. One guy really likes the cambered bar, so I'm going to butcher his last name. Kristovic did 3 studies in 2 years on a cambered bar versus a straight bar. I was like, interesting. So the cambered bar, no big surprise, increases range of motion, and that will also increase anterior front delt activation, and it increases power output. So you actually have more power output with a cambered bar than a straight bar if you're somebody who cares about that, which usually is not bodybuilders, but we'll still have the discussion. So how would a cambered bar where you're getting deeper in the stretch increase force output? Or power output, I should say, not force output, because there is no difference. Well, that increased range of motion allows you to accelerate the bar further over a longer distance, which leads to a higher bar velocity and power outputs, because power is force time velocity. How quickly can you move a given load through range of motion? So head to head, the cambered bar, athletes are able to do a lot more power with that. There was mixed results of whether or not the cambered bar induces higher levels of fatigue than a traditional barbell. One study said no, one study said yes. I just thought that was pretty funny given what's going on online with, Jordan Peters' post that broke the internet about quit worrying about fatigue.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that, but I loved it.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
And those two studies could be limited simply by range of motion.
Exactly.
You're going to be using a cambered bar, and maybe the range of motion they're keeping it the same. I don't know what those studies noted as far as range of motion. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, no. So they at least the 2 that I really looked at. The others, I did what I said never to do because I only had time to do the abstract. So I'm just being honest with that. But yeah, with the increased range of motion, you get that distance to accelerate the bar. It matters. They were curious about, did a camber bar in one study increase the number of reps or time under tension? And it did not. Typically, people got less reps because, bigger range of motion, right? It's going to be way harder. But the time of tension did not increase. It was about the same because of that extra range of motion. I really like cambered bars so long as your shoulders can allow it, the way that Dante showed Dusty Hanshaw a couple of years ago, where you're on a flat bench and it's super light. It's murder. Like, you try and do 20 reps with it, you might only have a plate aside as a mere mortal, and you're coming down and then you're holding that stretch position for 5 seconds every rep. And then you're pressing up. Holy hell. Because that's so much time in that loaded stretch position.
Yeah.
It's brutal. I wish I could do the gridiron or the football bar, and I wish I could do the cambered bar to do that as my 2 favorite flat bar pressing motions that are not a traditional bar, because I'm pretty damn headstrong. Unless you're a power lifter, stop doing a flat barbell bench as a bodybuilder or gen pop. Just stop doing it. I know nobody wants to hear that, but if you want to do this for as long as Skip's been doing it, or as long as I've been doing it, stop flat benching. But the cambered bar is a way to bring it. And like I said, it's going to be light. I mean, just try it with just half a plate aside, and you will be humbled, because you've got to do 5 seconds and try and hit 20 reps. Good luck.
Now, I'm not going to try it because I will not force range of motion. That's why the cambered bar has never, I think I've used one twice in my life. But no,
Okay.
probably 5, and 3 of those times have been the GridIron bar that's cambered already.
Yep.
And I knew even from using that bar with a more neutral grip or a V grip, I'm like, I'm not forcing this. No. I'm not forcing this awkward range of motion in my shoulders and in my front delt. Hell to the no. So
yeah, and we've beat that with a dead horse of stay within your active range, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about that multiple times. But if you do some of the drills I've highlighted on here, you should gain anywhere from 1 to 4 inches of depth, especially as you're warm. So yeah, stay with that. Don't force it, but it's brutal. I know some people really like rows with it because you could get your elbows even further back because you have that cutout. So
especially if you have a lot of distension and you tend to have a rounder gut to where you can't pull and you're missing a couple inches on the top. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes more sense to me for the average bodybuilder than the pressing. But yeah, it's just a fun variation. And that is Dante Trudell's thing. So I always give people credit.
And let me add this because I think this is important. People might be listening going, oh, this is powerlifting stuff. This doesn't, you don't have to use a cambered bar to force a range of motion or to go deeper. You can use a cambered bar simply so it doesn't touch.
Yep.
Just so there's no touch there. It would be similar to using a bar and doing what I do. One of 2 things. I either do not touch and I keep it this far from the chest, or I do what's called essentially stop reps. I rarely will bench, but when I do bench and I finish with benching, they're called stop reps. I go down and I literally stop.
Love it.
Stop. Some people say, well, you can hold it. If you stop and you rest there, then you're resting. Cause I get a lot of that recently. Well, you're not doing it hard if you're, that sort of thing. There's hard, there's intense, and then there's just variations. And the stop reps are one of those variations where it's just dead stop and then drive. Dead stop, drive. And if you think it's easy, don't tell me it's easy until or unless you do it. And then come back and go, no, you're a pussy. It's easy. Then you got an argument.
Because there's something called a stretch shortening reflex that most people rely on that to initiate the movement. They're relying on the rubber band of you stop all momentum. Good God almighty. It's brutal. Hence, I brought up pin squats with that football bar as a muscle round. So stealing
what
from
about the studies?
Doing it with that, it's brutal. And when you stop and you take that stretch shortening reflex out of it, you are not as strong. You don't get as many reps and you will feel the target muscle. So when people have lagging body parts, a lot of times I go, oh, you're stopping in the contracted position and you're stopping when the muscle's stretched. And then you've got to initiate. If you've never felt the muscle, so like for sure, like for your chest, for your pecs. Yeah. If you have a hard time feeling your pecs, do what Skip just did. Now you stay tight in the bottom. You're still flexing your pecs.
Yeah.
But you take all momentum out and you stop for a solid 1 or 2 seconds and then you go, I promise you will feel stuff move you have never felt contract before.
Well, and I was referencing the studies because you said they got less reps with the cambered bar. Maybe it's because there was no touch and go. They had to actually stop the bar before it touched their chest. There's literally no momentum or no bounce because you have to stop it and reverse the motion. So that could very well be that deacceleration or deceleration and then accelerating again from after changing direction. So that's going to eat up contractile force and reps as well. So there's just, again, it provides another gray area in a study where you go, well, what did they do? Did they do this or did they do that? What did it look like? So,
and a lot of these bars allow us to get funky with it, like Dante talks about, which is great for variation, for fun, right? Being a meathead is really fun where you get access to new stuff and you try new things, especially you've been doing it as long as you and I've been doing it. Right. You need variation. It's fun. We're not saying this is going to be your new meat and potatoes, but I would challenge people, if you've never done what Skip just talked about, do that, not as your main movement, but do that for, I prefer somebody to do something at least 12 weeks before you make an assumption of whether or not it worked for you. I bet you would see some pretty new strength gains as well, right? and size gains, right? Because you're doing something new and you're taking away the rubber band effect.
And after doing it once, come back and tell me that the pump wasn't obviously and
You're
grossly
so sore the next day.
Exactly. It's just, and this comes back to, I don't want to beat this like a dead horse, but it comes back to, I respect people's opinions. I don't care if they have trained for 3 years or 20 years or whatever else. What I don't like is when people give opinions on something and then you catch them and they say they haven't tried it.
Yep.
That is bullshit to me. That just never, basically your opinion just went to the trash because you're saying, no, I don't want to do that because I know that doesn't, you don't know shit because you haven't tried it. So you can't give an opinion. You can't opine if you only have one side when it comes to the experience or applying it practically. Man, I'm struggling. It's like the Bulgarian split squats or whatever the hell I was calling them in the last episode. Anyway, point is try these things and come back and give us your feedback. I'm open to that. Just try
so long as you try it.
Yeah.
If you try it and you don't like it, great, but at least you tried it. I'm usually of the mindset of try everything twice, right? Unless if you're having pain, and that's in all things in life, not just training. Like you got to do something twice, you got to give it a fair shake. But if you're having pain or an issue, don't force it. But yeah.
I tell my wife the same thing. I'm like, you didn't like it the first time, but you should
maybe
try it
second
again.
time. Yeah.
Just
double
one
trouble.
more time. Maybe you'll like it this time. No, anyway. Okay, so I want to jump then to the third, my third kind of favorite bar. And I'm kind of not transitioning, but I'm going to a cable bar attachment here instead of just a regular, free weight or free bar. And that's the Rotate, Prime Rotate. I know there are a lot of offshoots or what I want to say, copies of the bar because it was so expensive and arguably overpriced. But you know what? They came out with the concept and it was a great concept. The only complaint that I have with these bars is the attachments are too long. What it does is if you have a lat pull in your gym and it's not a real high one, you could literally not have the room to get a full stretch at the top, or on a seated cable row, same thing. And these bars and attachments they're just next level for back work, any type of cable work. But without that full stretch, it's essentially useless. So they could have compacted the connections, I think, quite a bit more than they did. But in a regular commercial gym where you have the high pulleys and the seated long pulley rows that are where they're supposed to be, you're probably not going to have much of a problem. But essentially, it's just I think they combined, tell me if you feel this way, they kind of combined the mag grip with full rotation. And it's just great because going back to the back podcast that we did on elbow position and everything, you have all this versatility and all this room to be able to tuck, roll elbows in, internal rotation. If you want to pull the elbows high, all sorts of shit, all within one attachment. And people will say, well, which one do I get? The long one, the short one, the tricep handle? I have only used the long version. And you can set them narrow and do tricep press downs with them that are crazy good anyway. And I've tried the tricep press down variation or handle that's specific for that. And I didn't think it was all that much better than the regular back attachment.
I second that because I've done both. Yeah. And for the expense and everything, I think the one is done. And I love the fact you could change grip widths to tailor you. So yeah, I'm a big fan, a lot of versatility. So if you're, you have beat up joints, that freedom, like Skip's talking about, to rotate, to play with width, to do what you need to is going to be vastly superior to work around an angry joint or a tendon issue. I really like that. And in fact, it's funny you brought up mag grips because that was going to be my last one, is just the original mag grip, which is great. Now, what's interesting, at least in the study that's on the screen, grip width in a overhand or pronated front pull down did not change lat activation. So do what feels best for you, do what works for you. In this one study, now again, it's not on 300-pound bodybuilders who have restriction issues, but do what feels best, play around with both. I get a much better stretch and I feel a much better contraction if my hands are slightly in versus super wide in my
Same here.
lats, but I am working around a shoulder issue, as everybody I'm sure is sick of hearing from now. So that wide is going to be really hard on your shoulder labrum. So if you could get in, and if you could get overhand or maybe neutral grip with the original mag grips, that would be ideal. I love how you have to grip the hands on each side. It takes that bicep out so much. So on your pulling motions, both of those, how the handle is designed, it takes a lot of your forearm flexors and your biceps out of a pulling motion. So I am a huge fan of both of those.
Well, it makes it difficult to force the elbows in when you can't force the wrist in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were really onto something. I mean, those are 20-year-old bars. I'm thinking 2008, 9, 10. It was in there somewhere because I remember the owner of the company sent me a couple of them to take into Armbrust Pro Gym when I lived in Colorado.
Oh, nice.
And people loved it. I loved them too, but people loved them. I mean, that's when they were trying out the different variations where the super narrow underhand and then the super wide. And we're like, this wide is way too freaking wide. This isn't working.
Correct. Yeah, I do the medium. I have a medium one in my trunk. So 2 gyms I train at, they were nice enough to buy them so I don't have to bring it in. And then one gym, it's always in my trunk. So if I need to hit that motion, and if you're having elbow issues and shoulder issues, again, doing a mag grip or the free motion one that you said from Prime, it takes a lot of stress off an irritated shoulder, an irritated wrist, an irritated elbow. So that's a way to continue to train and work around some irritation.
And when you have variations like that with grip, different grips and different angles and everything, I mean, that's just gold. It's not only good to avoid an injury or to avoid aches and pains and inflammation, but just hitting that muscle, such a multi-angled, complex muscle system with a bunch of different ways. That's gold. And that's essentially, and this is, takes us to the smash or pass, but that's why this topic is so important and why I wanted to do it, because not only do some people not know about some of these bars, but I think a lot of people think, well, I have to change the exercises or I have to change the sequence for variety, when you can do the same exercises, almost exactly the same, but subtle changes in just grip or shoulder or elbow position can vastly change the stimulus of essentially the same exercise. And anytime you do that, chance for hypertrophy there, because adaptation, you're creating a stimulus that is not what it was last week and not what the body is used to. And that's growth. That's hypertrophy.
And I would argue more joint friendly, because you're not doing that same wear and tear pattern. When we talked about with the progressive overload question, I don't like people doing the same movements every single week, especially if you're very logbook driven. You need multiple variations just from a wear and tear standpoint, let alone what you just said of, you do a lat pull down with your traditional bar overhand and you switch to mag grip, you will feel a difference. Like, that's awesome.
I want to see how many people just caught the gold that you threw out. And I bet a lot of people missed it. So I'm going to reiterate this.
Okay.
When you're in the same pattern of movement, you're putting yourself essentially in jeopardy of creating a pattern of inflammation, because it's the same pattern of movement. So, for the people who argue, and there's, you can argue this, it's fine. But for the people who argue, well, you don't have to change your exercises to provide a new stimulus for growth. You can do the same ones. You can just increase the strength and grow. True.
Yep.
But you can't argue against the pattern, the potential pattern of inflammation when you're staying with the exact same movement patterns. Argue that one. That one's harder to argue.
Correct. And what's nice, especially for more of a beginner type person, is if I'm switching from a traditional lat pull down to one of the handles that we said, it's still grossly the same movement, a subtle tweak. So it's not like you have to learn this brand new motor unit pattern.
Right.
So that's really helpful as well for people newer in the world of what we're doing. Because yes, we just assume everybody has been training for decades like us. But for a beginner, yeah, like I absolutely would have soccer mom Susie rotate through 2 different attachments for a lat pull down, because it's grossly the same movement with a little tweak. So she's still getting that motor unit or the motor learning going. It's not totally different, but it's subtle enough to where there's all those benefits. Yep. So absolutely. Yep.
I think we should move to the smash or pass.
Hey, look who remembered today.
That's 2 episodes in a row, right?
Right. You must have Post-it notes like everywhere on your screen.
No, I was just really embarrassed that was the crux of the show, and I had forgotten it to the point where, you know, Chris is like, bro, like you guys didn't even do the smash or pass. I'm like, what? Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to forget. That's embarrassing. You want it first? Or you want me to take it?
I'm smashing on everything we just said.
That's funny. That makes it easy because, quite frankly, that's where I am. Smash the hell out of changing up movement patterns, if even slightly. Mm-hmm. And not only, like I said, to avoid the consistent movement patterns to keep inflammation low, which is important, but I still say and will continue to stand by the fact that I am a big fan of even subtle changes in variety, especially when it comes to multi-angled joints, shoulders, legs, things. Biceps could care less. Doesn't matter. Do curls. Just do variations of curls. No big deal. I don't have a lot of variety in my bicep training. But when it comes to shoulders or back or things around a multi-angle, there are too many angles there that I don't want to leave out. So anytime you can mix it up, do it. And because if anybody's thinking, oh, like I said before, they're powerlifting bars or whatever, they still have a place in bodybuilding for what we're essentially, for exactly what we're discussing, for that variety, for that changing, and just change a movement pattern. Smash, smash. The sweet music of love, we can no longer make. Intimate time with Skip and Dr. Marv. I get to read the questions, which I much prefer versus answering the questions. Real quick, it's just 10 questions that we ask each other. We take turns every episode. It's just a little bit of insight into what we like to do or the things that interest us outside of the industry, outside of bodybuilding, not related to our work. Number 1, you ready to go?
Absolutely.
How fast have you gone in your new car?
Yeah. So I got my dream car delivered last Saturday. I averaged 7 miles per gallon that day. It was glorious.
That's awesome.
I haven't gone crazy fast, which is going to disappoint people. I've only taken her up to 80, but I've been flooring it. But that's because I'm going to start getting in the world of racing. So like, I don't need to go crazy. I know next month, one of my patients is a driving instructor. We're going to set up some cones in a parking lot. And that's my first little bit of racing. Then I will slowly build from there.
Nice. Number 2, if I took a black light to the back seat of your new car, would it light up like a murder scene?
We have not gone on our first date yet in that because I'm fighting. Actually, what's funny, I cleaned it, made reservations. We were literally getting dressed. And she goes, wait a second, can you taste anything right now? And I was like, oh, no. And we got reservations at a high-end sushi spot.
Oh, okay.
So I rescheduled them for 2 weeks.
Nice. Number 3, the one thing you ate this last weekend that you don't normally eat, but fatties eat all the time. And it could be last weekend because if you didn't have any taste, because you're not feeling well, we'll go back to the other weekend.
Oh, God. Well, I'm not eating anything. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I made like homemade tacos, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, like the shells you put in the oven. I hadn't had those in like years. And I was
those old school, but they're good.
They're good.
I haven't had those in years.
I even made a homemade double-decker a la Taco Bell style.
Nice.
That was my thing as a kid. And I was like, this is pretty damn good. Yeah.
You haven't had a fruit pie yet, have you? Hostess fruit pie?
Nope.
I literally am making a note. I'm going to send them to your house. Look, check your mail over the next week.
Yeah.
Number 4, if I came to Houston and we played 9 holes of golf, would you beat me?
Well, I've never played golf in my life, so probably not.
Oh, okay.
I've
I did
done
not know
virtual
that.
reality. I've done Wii Tiger Woods. I'm dangerous on Wii Tiger Woods, but in real life, I think it would be me.
Gotcha. Number 5, the one thing you like the most about your fiance that has nothing to do with her vagina.
Oh man, no, I'm just playing. I'm just kidding.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. She is the most supportive person I've ever met. Like, she's the reason why I got my dream car, because I'd
Nice.
always promised I would get her car first, and she's like, "No, you are getting this. You're ordering it right now." Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Mhm.
Good call. Number 6, the worst habit you have at home that your friends would be repulsed by, or you would not want them to see you do. And if it makes you feel any better, I will share one that my wife hates, and most people will think it repulses them. So just so that you don't feel like you're alone.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not the best at putting dirty clothes in the actual hamper.
Okay, but I can beat you pretty bad with this one.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm perfect, Skip. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, good Lord. I always tell, like, I'm a little messy. She gets irritated. I'm like, well, I can't be 100% perfect. I have to be like 5% imperfect for you.
Yeah.
Oh, my toothbrush is disgusting.
Oh, okay. That's a good
I'm
one.
not the best at rinsing it out, so it gets goop on it. Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty transparent. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So
I
there we
still
go.
think I have you.
Okay.
I have a hand towel. And my wife.
Can it stand up on its own?
No, that is, I thought about that too. I'm like, that's probably what they're going to think. But I use it to blow my nose. And my wife knows it's my, I know, it's my towel. It's in the master bathroom. No one will ever see it. But I'll tell you why I do that. Because I will rip through expensive paper towels, because I will get a new one every time I have to blow and I blow my nose all the time. And it just, and it's not like green mucus booger. It's literally just clear snot, but I can't. So I have a towel, and it just repulses her that I have this, but I save, because I just go to my towel, blow my nose, set it right there. It's just always in the same spot. I understand it's gross, but if you're never in my master bath, and I don't think anybody's in our master bathroom.
Yeah.
That I'm not aware of, because I do work from home.
Better never put it in a different spot, because if she ever grabs and uses that thing and realizes it afterwards, I think there would be some problems.
That's probably why she was mad, until she realized that it never went anywhere else. It just stays right there. Anyway.
Yep.
All right. Number 7, favorite cold cereal when you were a kid and now.
Let's see. Somehow Siri wanted to get involved. Man, I love grape nuts with 5 pounds of sugar poured on them as a kid.
Really? That's an odd one as a kid, but fair enough.
That's what I'm saying. That's odd. Right now, I have Fruit Loops and Rice Chex in my cupboard.
I mean, if you don't have Rice Chex, do you even bodybuild?
Yeah. But, there was one that I found. Oh, it's going to drive me. I'm going to remember it as soon as we get off. I had to quit buying it because it was not just being eaten post-workout. What was it? It was like some peanut butter thing.
Captain Crunch.
And it was, no, I like the roof of my mouth intact.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like chewing rocks, is it not?
Good God. I'm like, whoever approved this for kids?
And you keep doing it because it tastes so good.
Yes, correct. It was some sort of peanut butter thing, and I literally had to quit buying it because I would find myself eating it dry in bed, right before bed, which is the best time to eat simple carbohydrates.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was some peanut butter thing, and it's probably good I forgot, because otherwise I'd want to go out and buy it.
Right. Number 8, do you mow your lawn or pay someone else to do it? It matters.
I now pay somebody to do it because I can make more money. And I pay like practically nothing, where I'm like, I almost feel bad. So I tip them on the holidays. Yeah, I did it for the first year. I was very headstrong. She said she would do it. I said, absolutely not. That is not your job. But Now I pay somebody.
We have different households. If you see an ass crack underneath the sink because somebody's fixing something, it's my wife fixing it. She knows how to fix everything. She has
Nice
maintenance staffs and shit for the last 25 years of her job, and she knows a lot of that shit. I don't know nothing. I'm basically don't have a man card. Number 9, blinds open or closed, just in general, not filthy, dirty, or anything like that. Just
open.
Okay, and here's why I ask. We lived in Colorado, and when you live in the mountains, it doesn't matter that you can see into everyone's homes. It doesn't matter if it's day or night. You do not close your blinds because it's the high country. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I always wondered, I'm like, oh, it's Houston. I wonder if he has,
Well,
if it's
because, I live on a lake. So there's a lake in my backyard. So that those blinds are always open. In my room and in my office, they're always closed because of work. Gotcha. But I always make sure those are open because I see the backyard. And I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah.
And number 10, how many people do you consider close friends in your inner circle that you could count on without a second thought?
Six to 8 could be the whole, and like, we don't talk all the time, but from past relationships, like, the town where Ben Affleck goes, hey, you can never ask me questions about this. We're going to go somewhere and we're going to hurt somebody. You can never ask me about it. Blah, blah, blah. So I need to know you're in, you're out. And the guy goes, whose car are we taking? Like, it's that.
My list is a little shorter than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's call it 3 to 5 now, just to be safe.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Yep. You're off the hot seat.
Nice.
You got a question or two? How we, I think you have the questions, right?
Let's at least do the first one. We might need a pause on the second one, but since I promised him I would do it last episode. So this is me going to talk for a bit. This is from Mark Ramus, I8R, pretty much saying we're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Thank you very much. Does Dr. Marv have a specific protocol for golfer's elbow? I pick up the general pointers for treating tendons. I just wonder if he has any specific tips. I deal with this issue regularly, and it's pretty relentless in limiting things. So, because he specifically said golfer's elbow, I'm going to take him at his word that he is correct, because tennis elbow, so golfer's elbow's inner, tennis elbow's outer, tennis elbow's 3 to 10 times more frequent than inner elbow pain. But since he specifically said it, I will say, sure. And 80% it is your dominant side. If you want to do a fun experiment, put your dominant arm in a sling for just 1 hour, or just, you don't buy a sling, just take a belt and mimic a sling and see how you use your dominant arm for literally every single thing we do. It's mind blowing. So that's why that's super high. Oftentimes, unless it's like sport specific, so throwing is the most common one for this. Usually it's load management, but lifters do have a pretty high prevalence rate. When it comes to somebody who's our population, who's training, eating healthy, doing cardio, or we're supposed to, blah, 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 it's usually load management, and it's coming down to a poor warm-up, poor blood supply, weakness, especially in specific muscles, I'm going to say, and then not being flexible or mobile enough, or forcing movements like the barbell underhand row versus using the football GridIron bar or an easy bar even, right? Now, when you have pain with pronation, that is the most sensitive thing, test for like ruling in or out. Pain with wrist flexion is also helpful, but pain with pronation is one of the big provocative movements and tests I do in the office. If you're having numbness and tingling in these 4th and 5th digits, you have an ulnar nerve issue, which is prevalent about 10 to 20% of golfer's elbow cases. So the ulnar nerve comes here, golfer's elbow is there. You could see how irritation, not so much inflammation as we thought, but compression and tightness could cause that issue. And what's interesting is, my understanding is, it'll stick around a lot longer than even tennis elbow. So 25% of people will have golfer's elbow past the 1 year mark if they do nothing.
Okay.
Right. Tennis elbow is usually 6 to 12 months, but usually it's gone within a year. Golfer's elbow, I haven't specifically looked. That's from top of my head of just what I tell patients in office, but I'm pretty sure golfer's elbow sticks around longer because it's flexors, which you do everything with your dominant hand. What you need to do, and usually you don't need imaging. So unless you're a kid, I don't get imaging for this, or you're doing throwing sports where you're worried about literal eagle's elbow and stuff like that. You don't really need imaging. But remove the insulting movement, which means you're going to have to change some of your movements in the gym, right? Supinated is going to be really hard. Neutral's usually the best. Maybe, that bar once again. I know we keep coming back to what we just said. It's just a happy coincidence. I wasn't thinking about that.
Right.
So do that. Use your wrist straps. Use wrist cuffs, right? So getting wrist, instead of taking the hand, put your wrist cuffs there and squeeze something. And then you actually want to treat the actual elbow itself. So in office, that would be dry needling, laser, shockwave, scraping, flossing, manual work. So you're going to do that. And then you also need to look above and below, though, because he who looks only at the side of pain is a fool. So I look at the wrist. What is wrist range of motion? What is grip strength? What is your pronation, supination strength? We typically don't do a lot of work training this. Now, when it's flared up, you're not going to want to do it, but he said it keeps happening. Grab an old school hammer or a baseball bat and pretend you're a baseball player, right? That weighted stuff. I hate the term bulletproofing, but rice bucket and weighted pronation supination is a great way to just make everything below the elbow that much more resilient and help with grip strength in the gym. And then you're also going to want to look at wrist extensor strength. So these guys, because we typically don't do a lot. So with golfer's elbow in specific, I go, what's the opposite side? That's probably weak. So you want to strengthen that as well.
Yeah.
And then you want to look at shoulder mobility, especially external rotation, and neck mobility, especially rotation. And then can your thoracic spine, your mid-back extend, right? Because that's going to come into shoulder blade mobility. So that's what I am assessing in the office. Usually somebody has 1 to 3 main offenders besides load management. So I'll always find 2 of those to be an issue. I don't think I've ever found only one culprit. So that's what you do. Now, what you could do, isometrics and slow eccentrics are your friend, right? For tendon issues like we've talked about. There's something called the Tyler twist, which is literally designed for this. Now, you don't have to go spend money, but if you're sick of it or it keeps happening, the Tyler twist little tool, that's literally what you would type in on Amazon, could be really helpful. We know I love blood flow restriction, both for healing and training. So like when this is flared up, you might only be able to do blood flow restriction for arm day, but you're still going to maintain strength and size like we've talked about, and you're going to help the tendon heal. And then you could get, they're called counterforce braces or just the tennis elbow strap. You put it not at the, where's my camera? Not at the elbow camera, but like 2 fingers down. So that'll help a ton as well. And then there will be discomfort while you rehab. So tendon issues require load to heal. So you doing nothing, you taking ibuprofen, or you getting a cortisone shot and resting is the worst possible thing. Mm-hmm. So no, there's discomfort. What's really helpful is first thing when you wake up, if you could squeeze a ball and rate your pain. And if you wake up and you squeeze your ball and it's painful, which would be either a 4 or 5 out of 10 on a pain scale, you choose a line in the sand. It means you did too much typically the day before. So that's a quick and easy way. Where am I at with the rehab process? Did what I do yesterday, was it too much or not?
Okay.
And then go ahead. What's your question? And then I'm wondering,
is it simple enough that what if he actually plays golf and that's how he knows what golfer's elbow is, mm-hmm. and it's from golfing?
Yep. So then you need to look at your mechanics, and that is, I treat a lot of golfers. I'm probably going to do an advanced DNS course for golfing in January because I'm curious, but I am not a good golf mechanics guy. But yes, one kid kept having it happen. Now he wouldn't strength train no matter what I would ask him to do. So I was like, Dad, just have somebody rework his swing. They did, and it went away. Right. Yep. So there's that. Tendons and stuff. At first, pain will dimmer switch down, and then it'll be on off. When pain is on and off, that is a good sign. So you'll be good all day. and then you'll go to open a door or shake somebody's hand, and it's going to hurt like hell. The fact that is on off again, and it's intermittent, not constant, is a very good sign, but don't freak out. But again, you're going to look at the wrist. Yes, the elbow itself, right? Make sure the elbow's moving. You're probably going to need to do something to treat that or at least load it, but look at your shoulder, look at your neck, look at your mid-back. And that is golfer's elbow in 6 minutes or less.
Nice.
Here is the contest for May of question to answer to get a 5-pound tub of TEAMSKIP Protein.
On that note, we got to get to getting.
Mm-hmm.
The Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It should sound a little something like this. And if you didn't like the show, just pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. If you want to hear your questions, feedback, and any ideas you have about future topics in the YouTube comment section. If your question or topic is chosen for the show, you'll go into a drawing, and we will randomly choose one winner at the end of each month who will receive a 5-pound bag of TEAMSKIP Protein from TrueNutrition.com. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just TEAMSKIP Protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use TEAMSKIP Protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that sexy. Dr. Marv, how can someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
Easiest way is Instagram at dr.marvin.saysdc. My office is in the Houston Bay area. My website's theeducatedmeathead.com. That's for if you want to do a consult, especially like a movement screen for training or posing and you don't live in Texas. That's a way to do that. If you do have golfer's elbow and you don't live in Texas, we could do a full virtual assessment. I just can't legally say you have golfer's elbow, but I would still give you all the rehab, all the self-treatment tools. Like I was helping somebody, I helped a strong man with that exact complaint. And he didn't have to go get manual treatment. We're able to do the rest. Another person, he had to go get dry needling. But still, we put together his rehab list, figured out what was causing it, and going from there.
Cool. If you have too much skin, go to teamskip.com and you'll find all my contact information, including hot TEAMSKIP merch like this. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind, this is a team of 3, not 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he's responsible for the visuals and graphics. He also plays a huge role in the creative process. This process and project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.
Loading TEAMSKIP. Loading TEAMSKIP.